welcome to my first video. Today's tutorial will be specifically on the tattooing of the Aztec indigenous tribe. So here I'm going to showcase everything that I'm using. Now, of course, I will here say that if you are new to tattooing, follow the very strict precautions. Do not tattoo yourself. Start with, basic supplies. So this black pad here is a covering for your surface, both for sanitary and in case you spill ink or anything. Very important. You don't want to ruin your stuff. Below that, it's kind of like a yellowish or skin tone. That is a fake skin. It is kind of like a very interestingly textured piece that's supposed to replicate human skin for practice tattooing. There I just showed you a stick of deodorant, which may sound funny, but if you're using a stencil, they're very important. Those little colorful cups are what will hold your ink when you tattoo, and then that is the tattoo ink. For this tutorial, I'm just going to be using black. It's not going to be very about making it like this flat tattoo look realistic, but rather the styles that were used for the Aztec tribes. Now this box is the tattoo gun itself. As you can see, I've already pre-wrapped it. This isn't going to be very specific to how to use a tattoo gun, so I'm not going to go into it. That is the pedal you use to get your tattoo gun moving. Here I'm taking it out, of course. This is me setting up my station. So that will plug into a power bank, which I'll pull out shortly. These are needle cartridges, which is, how you achieve different styles in tattooing. Now, of course, this isn't traditional tattooing done during that time period. During that time period, it was done differently as, electric powered tools were not in use. Now this box is the power cartridge, so it's what you plug into an outlet and then plug everything else into it. It controls your voltage. Voltage is, depends on what needle you're using, what specific gun, all of that good stuff. But this isn't a tutorial on how to use a tattoo gun. So all of my stuff are put aside. Now, if you don't want to get ink all over your hands, use gloves. If you're tattooing a person, use gloves, but also if you're tattooing a person, please make sure you have the practice and the correct, licensing. And that little cup is alcohol. It's what I'm going to use to clean my surface. You don't use that on a real person. I will preface, this is specifically for the use of a fake skin, not on a person. So here I'm going to begin organizing my area. So first I'm going to use the covering, which is very important. I'm just going to set kind of stuff to the side or on my lap. We open it up, very easy to use. There's kind of like a grippy side that will go face down on your surface. Now a lot of people will actually tape down their surface. I don't, but I do use heavier stuff to hold it down. Now of course if you're tattooing an actual person, it should be taped down. Those little cotton pads are what I'm going to use with alcohol to wipe my surface down. Now I have a very fresh pad here, fake skin, and then I'm going to open and retrieve my ink holder. It doesn't matter, exactly what type, as long as it's meant to hold ink. These ones I use have like suction cup on the bottom, which doesn't work because I'm using a covering, but a lot of people will actually use Vaseline to help stick it down. So now there's my ink. I'm going to set it to the side. I don't want to fill my thing yet as everything's not set up. Now there is my pedal. I am now opening my gun. This tattoo gun, is very simple. It has to be run plugged in. Some can be wireless, but I prefer that. So the brand that I am using, I will say, is just a brand that I got off of Amazon. I'm very early in my tattooing journey, so I will not claim to be an expert, but I do know basic safety. The brand is Wormhole. I wouldn't recommend it for actually tattooing somebody. You know, you want to invest in a better brand, but for practice, this is what I use. So the following would just be me, setting everything up. So everything is plugged in now and set up. So now our fake skin we are going to wipe down. So here I have my cotton pad. You can use wipes too. I'm going to dip a little bit in the alcohol and I'm going to wipe down my surface. This will help clean it, make it easier to tattoo on, all that good stuff. And then after you wipe, make sure you kind of let it dry. Now, a lot of people here would apply a stencil. I'm going to do freehand. Now, I'm going to just use a normal pen. Again, do not use this on a person. But here is where we're going to start looking at what makes up the style of art the Aztecs use. Now, my reference photo was a face from a lot of the Aztec calendars, which is a specific deity, which I'll explain a little later on. But first I'm going to start with the basics of the makeup of this style of art. So this style of art uses a lot of geometric shapes, a lot of lines, very precise. Now, I am not perfect at creating very precise art, so mine won't be as perfect, but when you're looking at this type of art to try to replicate it, that's what I would recommend. Maybe a ruler when you're drawing, whatnot. But again, in terms of tattooing, you can't just put a ruler on a person if and when you get to that level of tattooing. So freehand is very often. Now, when you do it on a person, you do use like medical markers, safe for skin, all of that. But for this, I'm just using, a pen I had lying around. There's nothing special, blue ink. It's all green. It's not a specific brand. I actually got it at an event at the school. And it just reads, "Stay strong. My story isn't over yet," which is a very important message that I believe in. So I will soon start drawing. So when it comes to drawing on fake skin, it's important to remember that you have to make sure it's dry before you actually start working with it. Otherwise, it'll be a smudge mess. And you have to restart all over again, which nobody wants. So before you decide to use your pen, make sure that you test it out, so that it'll work and it will actually dry on your skin like you need it to. Because nobody, like I said, nobody wants a smudge mark. So here I'll do like an example of what I mean. I'm going to test it out. So I'm going to draw just kind of like a scribble here. Test it out, give it a second to dry, and then wipe it. Check it doesn't wipe off. Perfect. Now, I also am going to check that it will wipe off with alcohol. And it does. So, perfect pen, that's what we're going to use. You can test out what pens you have at home. It'll be perfect. So now we're going to start on the actual drawing of this. So it's very important to remember, like I mentioned earlier, geometric shapes are very, very, very important in art like this. Very precise lines, triangles, squares. But there are also organic shapes present, half circles, more things that would occur naturally in nature. It's a nice variety mix. but it has to be one or the other. So it needs to be either very geometric, repeating patterns, or it needs to be more natural and organic. Now, the composition has to be in a pattern though. Like, you can't just have two organic shapes and then a geometric shape and then three organic shapes and then two like stuff like that. No, it has to be in kind of like a pattern. So, okay, organic, geometric, or two geometrics and organic, two geometrics, stuff like that. So I'm going to start, because I'm so sorry guys. With this, I am working with a reference photo. Now, my reference photo is of a specific deity in the Aztec culture. Now, the specific deity is used often when we're looking at like old calendars that they used, which is probably one of the most popular things that we see. So I just used something I had lying around that was more circular to help me get that shape, because I don't know about you guys, but I cannot draw a perfect circle. So the specific deity that I am talking about's name is, the Aztec deity I'm talking about is Tonatiuh, which is a one of the many deities that the Aztecs worshipped. Now, tonatiuh, according to Aztec mythology, was the god of the sun, also, or the sun god, and the symbol of the fifth world. So, the Aztecs recognized that there were 4 historical ages called the suns. We recognize them as like elements: earth, wind, fire, and water. Now, they thought that each had been destroyed, that the era that they were living in was the sun of movement. It's a very famous deity in Aztec culture, as this figure appears throughout many, many different pieces of art, especially in their calendars. So what I'm doing here is creating that figure's face. So the symbols that were present here were many. His tongue was a sacrificial knife used in rituals, which would often include giving sacrifice of something in order to please a god. So the sun god would get sacrifices in order to please him. They've seen that his work was very tedious. It took a lot of effort. And so they felt like to keep him happy and to show appreciation for the work, they would do sacrifices. Some of which were human sacrifices, and that is just something that in that culture was normal, which every culture has their distinctive things. Now, there was a lot of symbolism, like I mentioned. The symbolism of his tongue, which we'll see a little later, was a sacrificial knife often used for human sacrifices. He is also often depicted with claws of an eagle, sometimes even holding hearts, which were to represent human hearts, in terms of the sacrifice. Now, they often gave him eagle claws, specifically because they thought that the eagle represented his flight. So he was said to travel from the west to the east every single day across the sky. So the way that they viewed it was that an eagle, which is a very strong, powerful bird who, flies great distances, they seen that, it was similar to their deity, the god that they, one of the gods that they worshipped. I forgot to mention that the blood sacrifices, the human sacrifices, were not just to keep him happy, but they believed that the sacrifices were necessary for the cosmos. So they thought in order to keep the world working, to keep everything moving, time, the setting of the sun, the rising of the sun, all of that natural order that we acknowledge, would only be kept if he was happy, and they believed that he would be happy if he had sacrifices. Now, here I am just drawing out common symbolism. So for his face, there's a use of a lot of just lines. There's not many things filled in. Only not the pupil, but only his eyes filled in for the majority of the art. A lot of the art also is carvings, carvings into stone. So the translation from stone to a flat 2D surface is a little bit different. There was just, it's a very lot of straight lines, organic shapes, kind of like how I mentioned. And so here will be, watching me draw this. And then, later on I will start tattooing. And, like I said, it's not a exactly tattoo tutorial. But it will just be going over the lines that I already drew. So I'll give you guys some music. Feel free to, draw and tattoo along with me. I hope that this was educational, entertaining, and you learned something new today.